Welcome back to RED-C Roundup. I'm your host for today, Claire Standridge, and on this beautiful day, I'm so thrilled to share with you our guest for today, Allie Moroney. Allie, how are you today?
Claire, I am doing wonderful. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us for RED-C Roundup today.
Yeah, praise be Jesus. I'm excited to be here. I don't know if the listeners know this. I don't know how they would, but you and I know each other before. And
hmm
it's really beautiful to be able to combine evangelization efforts and to be able to just share in what God's done in each of our lives and to hopefully help him in his mission for the kingdom. So always happy to be able to do that.
Yes, it's so cool. And I love that, you never know where life is going to take the people you knew kind of in like childhood and adolescence. But it's so fun that we both ended up working in Catholic media.
Yeah, it's a small world, but also it's a really powerful one. And I think for such a time as this, so it's really beautiful
hmm
to see what the Lord's doing and to the Holy Spirit always runs in communion. So to be able to do that alongside sisters in Christ and people from your community is like the best.
Absolutely. It's so fun. So, as a little kickoff to this interview, Allie, can you tell our listeners where you are being interviewed from at the moment?
Yes. So I am currently coming to you live from Madrid, Spain. It's evening for me. It's like midday for you guys. But yes, I am American, but in Spain.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We love getting interviews from different parts of the world. I don't know how many we've had, but this is really exciting for us. But Allie, you haven't always been in Spain, have you?
No. So I guess a very brief introduction to me would be I'm a daughter of God. I am a wife. I am currently serving the church, God and his kingdom, through working for the Tabella app, a free Catholic app that facilitates communities in parishes, groups, and dioceses. And on that app, I run the media section. But I am originally from Texas. I wasn't born there. And as soon as my family moved there, I felt like I was called to go other places. But I did grow up there. And through a crazy series of events that I will share bits and pieces of today, the Lord led me on an adventure to eventually sell all my things and move to Spain, where I live now and will live indefinitely. So
That's incredible. That's wow. It's not very often that you see a real life example of Jesus's call to sell all you have and go serve. So, yeah, Ali, I think this is a good point to kind of transition. Can you tell us the story of how that happened?
yeah, definitely. And to me, it's just really a great opportunity. Like, I just want to express how much of a blessing it is to be able to share. Like, I think that sometimes when you hear big stories of God moving in the lives of others, you think that it's them on top of the mountain playing the electric guitar, just like having a great old time every moment of every day. But really, this is just the way that the Lord was particularly pursuing my heart. And it's just one piece of how God is continuing to pursue my heart. And in being able to remember this story and share this story, it's actually a help and a blessing for me in this current moment as I face new challenges and as I face new obstacles and continue to seek to give my life to Christ, because it's not something that ended when I made a big move and I sold all my things. Um, but it's something that's ongoing. So I just want to express that too, is that the Lord is always doing something new. And it's something that's constant. It's not just a one and done thing. And for me, I had a pretty radical reversion to the faith when I was 15 years old that changed my life. I came from a lukewarm Catholic family. I ended up going on a retreat. I had an encounter with Jesus in the Eucharist. And from that moment on, it set a fire in my heart to just want to live my life for the Lord. And after that conversion experience, I think I left with a certainty that the Lord wanted to do big things for my life and unique things for my life. Just like the Catechism says, we are all unique and unrepeatable expressions of God's love. And not just in the sense of God created us in uniqueness and particularity, but also like in the course of our lives, every element of our lives is woven with a lot of intricacies. And I think that I had that sense that And like the Lord like has a purpose for me here and he has a particular mission for me. And even though I had that conversion, I had that sense, it took a while to go through a purification, right? Because we have these conversions, but then it takes a while for our old flesh to die and for us to root out ways that are not of God as we're seeking to live our lives fully for God. And so this whole idea to move to Spain like did not happen overnight. It wasn't just like one day I woke up and then the next day I was like selling all my things and then moved to Spain. This was something that the Lord had planted in my heart. It was an idea that I didn't really know all the details of. I just knew that I loved to speak Spanish. And as I was praying and pursuing speaking the Spanish language, I started to hear God in Spanish, like speaking to me. And so I just wanted to hear more of God's
Wow.
voice. And so I started to like just try to open up the doors to kind of replicate that experience, right? And that's like a really good, like practical piece of advice, I guess, is that like, as you're like moving in the spiritual life, like if you have a sense for God's presence, keep moving in the direction of his presence. Like if you notice like an inclination, or a like towards like a specific like spirituality or like devotion of the faith, like, immerse yourself in that and then try to press in and see like, what is it that what it's being drawn out of you? What is it that exactly is being inflamed in your heart? And so for me, it started like that. And I actually first kind of received this like love for Spanish when I went to Spain right after college. After I graduated from college, I spent a summer in Spain working as an au pair. And I had like a horrible experience. It was like
Oh
one of those
no.
like movie experiences. Yeah, it was like one of those movie
Oh.
experiences, except like an au pair is like a fancy word for a babysitter, for those of you who don't know. And so I was like taking care of these kids and they hated me because they were like super wealthy and they had like a really difficult like family situation. And so they had like nannies like all the time. So I was just like one of many. And like we didn't end up being friends at the end. And so it was like one of those like very difficult, like real life challenges. And I was really alone in it. And the Lord like really came close to me in like prayer. Like I really used the opportunity of like being alone to like grow close to the Lord. And then the Lord started speaking to me in Spanish. And so then I came back to the United States. And like I said, I was trying to like replicate that experience. So I started going to Spanish mass and I started to read in Spanish and watch movies in Spanish. And it was like, I had this like whole life in Spanish. And in the meanwhile, I was working in ministry. I like had to get a job because girl got to eat, all those things. And so I was like pursuing like the practical things in my life. But in the meantime, like pushing into my desires and like asking the Lord, like what he wanted to do with those. And it was like little by little, like the desire just kept getting stronger and stronger. And so I started to like talk to my spiritual director about it and be like, okay, like I don't like just love Spanish and want to like be a Spanish teacher. I probably shouldn't teach anybody like a language, like even English. Like I wouldn't trust myself with that. But this is like so intense and it feels like a part of my heart is like coming alive in this. And so I entered into spiritual direction like a lot more seriously with like, okay, like what is it that's like that the Lord is like saying to you in this place? And it was like over the course of like 5 years where I was just, working jobs, working various jobs, making money to, pay the bills and do all the practical things. But on the side, like really diving into my dreams and focusing on my identity too, because pretty quickly I realized that as I was diving into my desires, that there were different things that were getting in the way because of different wounds I had received in my life. And so I went through like a process of healing at the same time to restore my identity so that secure in that identity, then I could receive like the mission that the Lord was wanting to give to me, that it wasn't something he was hiding to me, it was something that he wanted to share with me, but to share with me like when I was ready to be able to receive that mission.
Mm.
And so that was like a 5-year, like very hard, very like grueling process because it was like such a deep desire of my heart that I just wanted it immediately. But at the same time, like just having to really trust the Lord and to know that he was a good father and that, what good father like would give his son a snake when he asked for a piece of bread, like that classic line from the gospel, right? And to trust that he would give it to me when I was ready. And so I'll fast forward. There's so many details that I could share and Claire, feel free to ask questions with any holes. But eventually in 2022, the Lord opened up a door for me to be able to move to Spain. And when that door opened, I knew it was the one because I had waited and I'd also said no to other opportunities in the past. And so when the right opportunity came along, I had the whole network behind me, my spiritual director. I had done all like the hard discernment. And so I knew that it was the right opportunity. And then my heart was free to be able to give everything away because I had spent those 5 years kind of like detaching different things like from my heart, to be able to have my hands open, to be able to receive that calling when it came to me. And so, so I sold everything. I sold my car. Well, I gave away most things. The only things I sold was like a car. And I think I had like a computer screen or something like that. But I literally gave away a ton of things and sold my car. And it was like the craziest thing ever. And I came to Spain with 3 suitcases. And when I arrived, it was like I was coming home. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was really like a peace and a consolation that I'd never felt. Like, I lived a lot of different places before, but I'd never felt like I was home. But when I got to Spain, it's when I finally felt like I was home. And long story short, I ended up meeting my husband here. We got married, and now I'm here indefinitely. But like I said, Claire, there's a lot of details that I can share, so feel free to chime in with just with questions or places you'd like me to elaborate on.
Yeah, that's so incredible. Oh my gosh, as soon as you described the feeling of coming home and just the peace of, arriving in Spain, feeling like that was like you knew for sure, like that was where the Lord wanted you. And gosh, that's the craziest thing. I got goosebumps when you described that because wow, what an incredible feeling. I feel like we also get that feeling sometimes in like Eucharistic adoration.
Mhm.
And it's like you were saying, you know, you know, God was speaking to you in your head in Spanish. And that is just so, so incredible that was the way he led you. That's
Mhm.
that is so incredible. So how do you feel that of course it took a lot of radical trust, right? To and a lot of time and discernment to,
Mhm.
pick up and move across the world. So how do you feel that
Yeah.
that trust has really helped grow your prayer life and just kind of your relationship with the Lord?
Yeah, so I think that it's important to kind of understand like what trust is. And because I think that something that's really helped me in the realm, I would say that trust has been something that has developed in and through understanding my relationship with God. And not just in the sense of like my relationship is what I'm actively doing, right? Of like my relationship is I go to mass on Sundays. My relationship is I pray Lectio Divina. My relationship is I journal, whatever it is. But like really trying to understand like at the core of my heart, like how do I see like myself in relationship to God the Almighty? And most importantly, how do I perceive that He sees me? And so I think that in talking about identity, which is a super important topic today, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of crisis about identity, right? And it's really, John Paul II, I forget in which encyclical, but he talks about like the chief attack of the enemy in the fall was to separate us, God's kids, separate children from their father and to create confusion and misunderstanding. Because the enemy knew that if he severed that tie, then he could get us, right? That it like he could never get the father, right? Because the enemy can never overcome God. But creating a rift in that relationship, creating separation between the father and his kids, that was the way that he would be divisive, that would be the way that he would try to have the victory. And we know that
Yeah.
ultimately that Christ has the victory and that Christ came to be the bridge, as St. Catherine of Siena said, to connect us to the Father. And so I think that for me, like this whole process of discernment was really a process of me like having an honest look at my relationship with God. Like I said, I had like um, yeah, a radical encounter with Jesus when I was 15 that changed my life and that ushered me back into the reality of who I was and who the Father was. But my blueprint and like my wiring was not made, it was not hardwired, like to know that God was my Father and to know that I could really connect with him in the sacraments, right? Like I could receive the sacraments, but I wasn't conscious that those were the tangible, like real presence of the Lord. And so it
Mhm.
took like a process of trying to understand, like, okay, like what is my lived experience? Like, what is my past? What are the experiences that I've had? What is my idea of relationship? What's my imprint of relationship and intimacy? And then is that in line with like what the church and what scripture, the reality of like who I am and who God is? And so, and really what trust is that trust is that firm belief in the reliability that someone is who they say they are. And so it's being able to say that, like, you know, when I say that God is my Father, like, do I believe that in the depths of my heart? Like, is that just something that I'm saying just like to give lip service, or because if I don't say that, then like people are going to judge me? Or maybe like I don't believe that and I can't even say that God's Father because of my life experience or, you know, whatever has happened. There's been broken trust. There's been not a confidence that God is who he says he is. And so I think that in talking about like this whole journey of like building trust, really it's like affirming the character that God is who he says he is, really understanding who he is. And then in that affirmation, what we receive back is a confirmation that he claims us, like he did with Jesus in his baptism when he said, "This is my beloved son for whom I am well pleased." That's what the Lord does for us when we give him that full authority. And really, like throughout our whole lives, that's a process because our hearts have many facets. And so it's not just like a one and done thing of like, "Oh yeah, like I know you're my dad and like I trust you." It's like, no, like the enemy's constantly like trying to continue to sever like his efforts to try to keep us from our Father. It's not just something that he did at the fall, but it's something that he does in our lives here today. And so I think that this whole process really forced me to like be awakened to like the reality of the rift that existed between me and God. And then it was through this desire that the Lord was giving me an opportunity to reestablish that relationship. And then, like, in the end, like, I made it to Spain, right? But, like, that wasn't the goal. Like, the reason that I felt like I was at home by the time that I got here, it was because, like, I had already felt at home with God, like, in other places, like, that I didn't want to be, right? Like, and when I was in the US and I wanted to be in a Spanish speaking country, like I was able to find home with him there. And so when I was finally able to like enter into the place that I wanted to be, it was kind of like this feeling of like, but this is like only like truly good and truly sweet because like of all of those years that like I spent like longing and like purifying my heart, and now my heart is like open and alive to be able to fully receive this. And if I wouldn't have gone through that whole suffering, purification, waiting, long suffering and waiting, then like, yeah, like my heart wouldn't be awakened to like the richness of joy that you had set before me, that I had an intuition of that I had to do an act of faith. But I trusted ultimately because I knew that God was good and that he was my Father who would provide for me.
That's incredible. I absolutely love what has stuck with me through this whole interview is something you said towards the beginning. You talked about the way God pursues our hearts. And I love how you've tied like trust and identity into each other because I'm sure you can agree, even with not just in the spiritual life, but with friendships and of course in marriage, you can
Mhm.
trust this person completely, you know exactly who they are, their
Yeah.
identity individually. And now, when the identity changes to be like your spouse, it's like, wow, you just trust them more and more with each day as spend years and decades of your life together.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you brought up marriage too, Claire, because like I said at the beginning that, you know, I have this like epic story of coming here that I get to share. And like I said, get to revel in the greatness of God. But it's also like a memory stone for me to encourage me like now, and particularly my marriage and my vocation. I'm recently married. I was married almost a year ago. I'm coming up on a 1-year anniversary. So I'm still a newlywed.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone could pray for us. Our marriage anniversary is on the 9th of December. So our patroness is Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception. So love Mom Mary.
Beautiful.
But,
Beautiful.
yeah. So I think that, yeah, this story has been such an encouragement for me in marriage because yeah, like I said, like we all have these blueprints for relating and they're broken. And that's because of the fall. So even if we have the best parents in the world, that's the reality of sin in the world. And so as adults, we take our experiences that we have as children, we purify those with the Father, and then we are empowered to be able to go forth and live out the deeper relationship that God calls us to, that he calls us to first be in community in the church, right? And to not just be passive members in the pew, but to be like brothers and sisters, to see other baptized people as our family. And then people who are not baptized is like, well, you better get in the family. Like, I want to invite you in, right? So we're called to like those relationships. And then like we're called to, depending upon what your vocation is, and if religious life and priesthood or marriage, but then you're called to like imitate Jesus and lay your life down for the salvation of the other, for the good of the other, right? And so that's beautiful, but it's also really difficult. And I myself, I find it difficult. And I like to be that voice, to be able to not be afraid to say that, to not shy away from sharing that, the two becoming one is difficult. And I think that it's been so humbling for me in my marriage just to have these kind of, these young places of my heart where I experience kind of broken relationship be reawakened by the sacrament, by entering into a deeper relationship. And not because, I think that a lot of people like with healing that sometimes they can be like, I have to get perfectly healed before I talk with other people, enter into relationships, whatever. But it's really like love that heals us. And it's God calling us into these relationships that we are healed in the process. And so for me, it's been like, talk about trust. Like this year has been like a year of like redefining trust as I've like, let my spouse into my life. And I knew that was going to happen before marriage, but then like you live together and you're like, wow, I really got to let you in. Like I really have to allow you to accompany me in a way that, at least for me, has been really difficult. I've lived this like epic journey alone with the Lord. And so letting a man into that has been something that has been a challenge. But remembering this story and like remembering how radically God moved in my life has been such a consolation for me. And then also a reminder that I don't need to be afraid to let go. Like I said, I gave away all my things. And so I think about that a lot, especially in marriage, as I have to let a lot of things go, right? Claire, you know this, you're married, that you have to, there's a lot of things you got to let go and a lot of things you got to be like, this is not the hill I'm going to die on. Like, we don't need the dishes stacked that way. It's not life or death, like
it's
so
like
many things.
At the end of the day, it's not about how you load or unload the dishwasher.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And even, for me, letting someone like correct you. My husband is like the best teacher ever. Like he's just genius and the best teacher. But I got to be honest, I don't like to be taught. Like I was like this journey of getting to Spain, like probably took 5 years because I'm a stubborn student. I'm an independent learner. And so, letting someone, I'd like teach you and like show you another way is really humbling. But having lived that with the Lord, when those parts of me like come up and are like resistant to like my husband like coming into my life, it's like I remember back on those times with the Lord when the Lord was like calling me onto this like great adventure that I didn't have all the details for. I didn't necessarily feel equipped for. Some things like most things were way out of my comfort zone. But remembering that like when I was able to like detach from those things, I was able to more fully attach to the Lord. And that same reality is true with my spouse. And so really everything runs parallel and it's all about that relationship. So yeah, so there's so many connections with marriage and relationships and it's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel since we were talking about like the so to speak, the marriage of identity and trust? How do you feel that your new vocation as a wife has really shifted your prayer life? How do you feel that it's like you said, more directly being taught by someone?
Mhm.
How do you feel that that has kind of affected, I guess, your relationship with the Lord in a sense?
Mm. Well, I think two things. One of the biggest things that has been hard for me as someone who like I mean, especially when I was in like a very thick part of my healing journey, that man, I mean, I was like practically like living on the church. Like I would like wake up in the morning. I'm a crazy lady who wakes up super early. And when I lived in the United States, I used to wake up at 3:30 in the morning. I know. You in case you were thinking I'm not crazy. I am. I'm very realized. I know who I am. Like it's fine. But
That's incredible. I could not.
I am a very like mission oriented person. Like God built me different. Here in Spain, I wake up at 5:30 because the culture works different. Spain is much later culture. Like we stay up a lot later here. So
Mhm.
like waking up, people are going to bed at 3. So that doesn't work here. But in the US, there was like I used to wake up at 3:30. I'd wake up, I'd pray the rosary, I'd go work out, I'd go to mass, I'd come back, I'd go to work. On my lunch break, I'd go to adoration, I'd go back to work. And then after work, I would go to adoration again. I'd come back to my apartment and I'd probably like pray more. So I was just like really like so diligent with prayer. But it was also because I was like pursuing this mission, if that makes sense. So I was like in a really, it's really trying to be attentive to God's voice. And so I think that in a way, when I got married, having to kind of back down on some of those things was actually something that was like really good for me. Like it was something that like it was a new season and it was a new mission. And the new mission that I have now requires like a lot of more simple things that maybe like don't fit like on like a regimented schedule, if that makes sense. I'm a super regimented person. And so having to change that was very, very difficult for me, especially in like the first month. Like I had to be honest, like it was really, really hard for me. And in a way, it was like the Lord kind of showing me of like, again, another opportunity, like to believe that like the change in the schedule and the change in my prayer was not something that was taking me away from Him, but it was actually like opening a new way for me to connect with Him in a different way.
Mm.
And I think that I can certainly be like efficiency minded because this is the way God made me. And so the Lord's like really been teaching me a lot about like connecting with Him, like in the little moments and like really in and through like the little interactions with my spouse as well. And so one of the things I like to tell people is that I think most women, right, we like to like care for our husbands in the way of like keeping the house clean. I know some couples like have a different arrangement, but I think across like most of my friends, like women typically are the ones who are in charge of cleaning, not to fit in the stereotypes, but I certainly take that role in my marriage, and it's like an act of love I do for my spouse. So I try to like keep the house clean. And so when we first got married, I used to like I still wake up at 5:30, but I would like get back from the gym and like mass, and I would like spend like the time that I had before I had to get ready to go to work cleaning. Because in my mind, I'm like, this is me like doing an act of love for my husband. And then like one day, like I don't know why, but my husband had mentioned something of like, oh, like I like miss like I like the weekends because like I wake up and you're there, and I like to wake up and you're like by my side.
Mm.
And I felt like the Lord like stopped my heart there. Like when I heard that, like I don't know, it was like when he said that, it was like, oh wait, hold on, I gotta pause here and like listen. And I felt like the Lord like telling me like you gotta slow down and you have to like stop like trying like to be the most efficient and like connect, like stop and connect. And so like the next morning I like went to clean because I kind of ignored that. And so I'm like cleaning. And then I just like felt like the Lord being like, hey, like, do you remember what I told you like yesterday? Like connect. And so I like was like, but Lord, I can clean everything. Like this is the perfect time. And he's like, okay, like, but you're missing out. And so it took like putting down like the cleaning and stuff and like getting back into bed and like spending those like few moments, like just like 5 minutes, like just to be with my husband in the morning. And that sounds like silly and maybe other people don't have those struggles. Like I said, I'm my own kind of crazy. But I think that for me, like that's been like the biggest like um challenge and the biggest blessing of letting my vocation like yeah, like change my time in a way and like being willing to like give up like what I think is like the best, most effective like use of time, space, energy, like whatever it is. And like to really let like God dictate like how I love my spouse and to let love lead and to have that kind of focus on intimacy more than efficiency.
Ooh, I like that. Everybody who's listening, please write that down. That's incredible. I love that. So, with all that being said, Allie, I certainly know, there are some people who they're discerning their vocation, and it can be intimidating to think about how your time is going to change so much, whether you choose to enter seminary, enter religious life, get married. Like you don't. It's like you said, you don't have the same time as when you're, just
Mhm.
in a sense, trying to lean into that original solitude, right?
Mhm.
It's just
Mhm.
not the same. It's one is, it's neither good nor bad. It just is.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what would, I guess, what advice would you give to someone who's discerning, who's maybe intimidated by losing the time that they can currently spend to, like you said, be efficient and spend the most time with the Lord every single day they possibly can, specifically in
Mhm.
prayer?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that first, it's always so daunting when we look at it from, I guess, like the bottom of the mountain, Like you see like a place that you want to get to, like in prayer or your relationship with God, or even like in marriage, right? Like you like see the vocation of marriage, you see the vocation of priesthood, and you're like, oh my gosh, like everybody's like up here and like I'm like down here, It's like when you go to the gym and you see like those bodybuilders like lifting super heavy weights and you have like the 2 pound like pink dumbbells. It's like, whoa, like I can never do that. And you're right, like the first day, like you're not going to be able to, but I think that that first, like when you know who God is as Father, like to know that like the Lord um is gonna lead you and he's gonna teach you step by step. And that the things that we have attachments to, whether they be our time, our particular preferences, our rituals, our schedules, like whatever they are, that those things make us feel safe. That those things make us feel stable, and they're not bad in and of themselves, but maybe some of those things have to change so that you can say yes to a greater good. But to be able to get to that place, to be able to say yes to the greater good, to be able to say yes to more prayer, to be able to commit to a relationship, to be able to commit to the priesthood, like whatever it is, that we first have to feel like really secure that that place that we want to go, that greater good is indeed great enough like to satisfy and to make us feel stable enough. And so I think that um, having, like I said at the beginning, that foundation of that trust with God, and then specifically kind of diving into like the why behind all of the different attachments that we might have. And so, like, for example, like if we have a hard time, like for me, I'll give myself as an example, like with this cleaning example, like with my spouse. I think that for me, like when I dove deeper into this dynamic of like the cleaning and like why that was hard for me to like let go instead of like spending time with my spouse. It was partly because I think that for me, one of the chief struggles in my life is just like this lie that I have to perform to be loved. And so with
Mhm.
all relationships, and especially in my marriage, because obviously it's like the chief relationship in my life, that I can easily fall into that trap. And I can think that like, oh, like for my husband, like to love me, like I need to do X, Y, and Z. Like I got to keep the house really clean, and I've got to like cook dinner, and I've got to work, and I've got to like whatever it is. Like I've got to do all these things to be loved. And so when I was able to kind of like talk it out with my husband and him to say like, no, like actually like to like, I just want to be with you. Like, like that's it. Like I love you as you are. And I just want to be with you. And when I could like really like accept and receive that love, then I could like give my time and I could let go of that thing that was making me feel safe and was making me feel like a good wife, but actually was just like a cope because I was like still not secure in the relationship. And like I said, this doesn't just happen in like married relationships. This is like our blueprint for life and relating. And so kind of understanding those dynamics is super helpful. And maybe one more example I'll give is again just this example of like me giving away all my stuff. Um, I think about 3 years before I moved to Spain, I had another opportunity to move to a different Spanish speaking country that would have also involved and needed me to sell all my things. But I couldn't sell all my things. Like I just, I was like, that was crazy. Like, I have all these like things that I have attachments to, like this random shelf, this like clothes, like whatever it was. And so at that time, like I wasn't able like to say yes to that opportunity because I had those attachments. But with kindness and curiosity, I wasn't like reproaching myself for not being able like to give those things away. But I took that as like a sign that like that wasn't like the opportunity that the Lord had for me. And so like so that was like a key indicator for discernment. But also I was kind of able to like take from that experience to be like, okay, like why can't I let go of this material thing? Like, do I have a sentimental like connection to it? What does this thing mean to me? And so like little by little, I was able to kind of like analyze like all the different things in my life to be able to really like say like why it had a place there. To be like, oh, like I have this thing because like it fits this practical need, great. Or I have this thing because this is a reminder of my mission and my connection with God or whatever it is. So I think that with all of the different things in our life, it's sort of a constant discernment of that, of, what are my desires? What are my needs? And then what's my reality? And then like, what does God have to say in the midst of all of those things? And how do we really negotiate those three pieces to be so that I can continue to step forward into the direction of the mission that He has set before me?
Mm. I love that. I love the way you put that. And I heard it once said that trust in the Lord is not like having your 2 feet on solid ground. It's like swinging from a pendulum. You know, you're not holding on to anything. You might be flailing a little bit, but you're secure. You're
Yeah.
secure because you're connected to Him. In the few
Yeah.
minutes we have left, Allie, I was wondering if you could maybe speak to those Catholics who feel like they're perhaps stuck in analysis paralysis.
Oh.
They feel like they don't want to do anything because they feel like
Mm.
they haven't heard the Lord speaking to them. They haven't heard what He wants from them yet.
Mm.
So, do you mind? Can you speak to that a little bit? Just we have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, I think that I would just say that that you are so loved, that that you are so loved and so precious in the eyes of the Lord, and it's not a ambiguous love, but it's a particular love for you. And you're a unique person with your own unique story, with your own unique personality, likes, dislikes, temperaments, flaws alike, just like everyone else. And in and through all those things that the Lord is very attentive to you and He is present to you and that He's really there for you. Like He's really real. And He's not going to talk to you the same as your neighbor, your friend, your spouse, but He's going to speak to you in a way that's going to resonate only to your heart because that's what good fathers do. that they don't love their children in generalities, but they love their children uniquely. And so I would just say to you, my friend, that you're so loved and that the Lord loves you and that the Lord has something new to say to you, even right now, no matter where you are. And I think that every time that we get to that place where we wonder if the Lord's there or if our prayers are just kind of like going up, hitting the ceiling, coming back down, that it's a place where the Lord is wanting to reveal to us again, represent to us again his unfailing love. And just as he never grows tired in representing himself in the most holy Eucharist, that the Lord is going to do that in your life. And I declare that over you. I proclaim that over you. And I thank God in advance for the word that he is going to speak to you. So yeah, so that's what I say.
Amen. All glory to God. That was beautiful, Allie. Thank you so much for joining us for RED-C Roundup today. For anybody who's listening who maybe wants to hear a bit more from you, where can people find you?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram. You can follow me, Allie Moroney. I also have several podcasts on the Tabella app. We also make those available through Spotify, but primarily through the Tabella app. So I would totally recommend downloading that. It's free on the App Store and Google Play. I have a particular show called The Life of a Priest, where I interview priests for vocation stories. But I make a bunch of other content beyond that. I also have a blog and a website. That's my name as well, Allie Moroney. So,
Well, that's wonderful, Allie. Thank you so, so much again. And thank you to everybody listening. We're so glad you joined us for today's episode of RED-C Roundup in this beautiful November 2024. And remember, when considering the values of heaven and earth, always round up. See you next time.
Glory be to the Father,